Dr. Maya Reeves had exactly 12 minutes to decide whether to let a patient die. She stood in the sterile hallway of Memorial Hospital's burn unit, her surgical scrubs still spattered with someone else's blood, staring at two clipboards. Two patients, one operating room, both would be dead within the hour, without immediate surgery. Bed 7, Marcus Webb, 42, father of 3, caught in an apartment fire while trying to rescue his elderly neighbor. Third-degree burns, covering 60% of his body. Good man, decent odds if she operated now. Bed 12. The patient had no name on the chart, just John Doe and a police guard outside the door. The arsonist who'd set the fire that burned Marcus Webb, burns just as severe, odds just as slim. Maya's hands trembled as she held both charts. 11 minutes now. The nurse's voice was gentle but urgent behind her. Dr. Reeves, we need your decision. 6 months ago, Maya would have made this choice in seconds. She'd been the youngest head of trauma surgery in the hospital's history, known for her steady hands and steadier judgment. She'd saved hundreds of lives, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed medicine was pure, that her only job was to heal, not to judge. That was before the accident, before her daughter Lily. Maya closed her eyes, but that was a mistake. Behind her eyelids, she saw Lily's car, crushed like a tin can, the drunk driver walking away with minor injuries, and her daughter dying in her arms, while Maya could do nothing but hold her and feel her slip away. The drunk driver had gotten 7 years. Lily had gotten a grave. The nurse spoke again, more urgently now. 10 minutes left on the clock. Maya opened her eyes and looked at Bed 12's chart again. The arsonist was 18 years old. The police report showed history of mental illness off his medications, set the fire during a psychotic episode for people injured. Marcus Webb might lose both legs. She thought about the Hippocratic oath she'd taken 20 years ago. First, do no harm. She thought about medical ethics, about treating patients regardless of who they are or what they've done. She thought about Lily and how the drunk driver who killed her had received excellent medical care while her daughter bled out. Prep Bed 7, Maya heard herself say. Marcus Webb goes first. The nurse nodded and hurried away. Maya stood alone in the hallway, knowing the truth. She'd made a choice based on judgment, not medicine, crossing a line she'd sworn never to cross. She had 9 minutes to get to the operating room. 9 minutes before Marcus Webb died. Somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes before the boy in Bed 12 did, unless she was very lucky with Marcus Webb's surgery. Maya pushed through the OR doors where the surgical team was already assembled. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Patterson, gave her a concerned look. Maya, you okay? You look like you haven't slept in days. I'm fine. Let's begin. Marcus Webb was already unconscious on the table, his body a landscape of devastation. The burns were worse than the chart had indicated. She spent the first 5 minutes assessing the damage, cataloging the procedures she'd need to perform. She made the first incision, and her hands were steady. They were always steady, no matter what chaos raged inside her. That was the cruelest joke of all, that she could save strangers with precision while being unable to save the person she loved most in the world. Time check, she said. The surgical nurse glanced at the clock. 23 minutes since prep. That meant the arsonist in Bed 12 had maybe 40 minutes left, if he was lucky. Maya worked faster, racing against 2 clocks, the one counting down Marcus Webb's survival, and the one counting down her own moral compromise, because as she worked, she realized something that made her stomach turn. Part of her didn't want to finish in time. Dr. Reeves. Patterson's voice cut through her dark thoughts, his blood pressures dropping fast. We're losing him. I need better visualization here. The next 15 minutes were controlled chaos. Marcus Webb was crashing, his body going into shock. But Maya had been doing this for 20 years. She knew every trick, every way to buy a dying patient another minute, another chance at life. She saved him. He's stable. Patterson announced 55 minutes after they'd begun. Vitals are holding steady now. Maya stepped back from the table. 55 minutes. The arsonist would be dead, or close to it by now. Close him up, she told her resident. I'll check on him in recovery. She stripped off her gloves, but before she could leave, the doors burst open. It was Dr. Chen looking frantic. Maya, Bed 12 is coding. He needs surgery now, or he's gone. Maya looked at the clock. She looked at Marcus Webb, stable and closed. She looked at her hands, which had just saved 1 life, and were being asked to save another. I need 10 minutes, she said. "Scrub out new gloves, clear my head." "He doesn't have 10 minutes, Chen said bluntly. The entire surgical team turned to stare at her. "Then get someone else." In 20 years, no one had ever heard Maya Reeves refuse a patient. "There is no one else," Chen said. "Phillips is in surgery, Kowalski's handling a car accident, and you're the only burn specialist in the hospital. It has to be you, Maya." The weight of what she'd done settled on her shoulders like a stone. "Dr. Reeves." Chen's voice was quiet now. "He's 18 years old. Whatever happened, he's 18. 18. The same age Lily had been when Maya had taught her to drive. 3 years younger than Lily had been when a drunk driver ended her life." Maya closed her eyes and saw her daughter's face. From the day Lily had found a bird with a broken wing and begged Maya to fix it. "You're a doctor, Mom. You can save it. You save things. That's what makes you a hero." Maya opened her eyes. "Prep at 12. I'm coming." She saw the relief flood Chen's face. She scrubbed in again, hands moving through the familiar ritual. When she entered the second OR, the arsonist was already on the table, surrounded by machines screaming their urgent warnings. The police guard stood by the door, arms crossed. "Chart says his name is Daniel Ortiz," the surgical nurse told her. 18 years old, diagnosed with schizophrenia at 15, off his medications for 3 months. This is his first violent episode. Maya nodded, looking at the burns covering his body. He'd been standing closer to the fire. His odds were worse than Marcus's had been. "Let's begin," Maya said. She'd already been operating for nearly an hour, but surgeons learned early how to push past exhaustion. It was part of the job. Daniel Ortiz crashed 20 minutes into surgery. His heart stopped, and Maya had to perform open cardiac massage while the team shocked him back to life. He crashed again 20 minutes later, and then again. Each time, Maya brought him back. She worked for 2 hours repairing vessels, grafting skin, fighting to save a life that part of her still believed didn't deserve saving. Her hands never wavered, but inside, she was at war with herself. This boy had hurt people. He'd nearly killed Marcus Webb, had traumatized families, had caused suffering. He'd been off his medications, but that had been a choice, too. And now, Maya was fighting to give him a future that her daughter would never have. But she'd taken an oath, and she'd told Lily from the time she was small, "We save people. That's what doctors do. Not because they deserve it, but because saving lives is always right." Maya had believed that once before loss had taught her the world wasn't fair, but Lily had believed it until the end. And Maya owed it to her daughter's memory to try to believe it again. To be the hero Lily had thought she was, even if she didn't feel heroic at all. "How's he doing?" she asked. "Stabilizing," Patterson said with surprise. "I didn't think we'd get him this far." "Neither did I," Maya thought. She worked for another hour, closing with meticulous care. When she finally stepped back from the table, it was nearly midnight. She'd been operating for almost 5 hours total. "He's going to make it," she told the team. "Good work, everyone." In the scrub room, Maya washed her hands and stared at her reflection. She looked exhausted, older than her 45 years. She looked like someone who'd just fought a war with herself and wasn't sure who'd won. Dr. Chen found her there. "Marcus Webb is awake and asking for his family, and Daniel Ortiz is stable in the ICU. You saved them both, Maya, against all odds." Chen paused. "The police said most doctors wouldn't have tried that hard for someone who'd done what Daniel did." "I almost let him die," Maya said quietly. "I chose Marcus first, knowing Daniel might not survive the wait. I told myself it was medical, but it wasn't. It was personal." She turned to face Chen. "I broke my oath tonight." Chen was quiet for a moment. "But you didn't let him die. When it mattered, when you were the only one who could save him, you did. You're human, Maya. You lost your daughter 6 months ago. The fact that you struggled doesn't make you a bad doctor. The fact that you saved him anyway makes you a good one." Maya wanted to believe that. "I need to check on my patients," she said. Marcus Webb was in recovery, surrounded by his wife and 3 children. When Maya entered, they rushed forward with tearful gratitude. "Dr. Reeves, they told us you saved his life. That he might not have made it if you hadn't operated when you did." Maya felt the words like a knife. She thought about what she hadn't told them, that she'd chosen him first because she'd judged him more worthy, that the choice had been right, but for wrong reasons. "I'm glad I could help," she said. "He's going to need extensive physical therapy, but his prognosis is good." She checked his vitals, answered their questions and left them to their relief. Let them have their simple story. The truth was too complicated. Daniel Ortiz had no family waiting, just the police guard and the machines keeping him alive. Maya stood at his bedside and looked at his bandaged face. He was someone's son. Somewhere, someone had held him as a baby and dreamed of who he'd become. He'd done terrible things. He'd hurt people. He'd have to face justice for that. But he was alive to face it because Maya had chosen to save him. She thought about Lily, about the drunk driver who'd killed her, who'd received excellent medical care in this same hospital. Maya had hated the doctors who'd treated him, but now she understood. They hadn't been condoning what he'd done. They'd just been doing their jobs, fulfilling their oath. They'd saved a life because that's what doctors do. Maya adjusted Daniel's foreline. "You're going to live," she told him quietly. "And then you're going to have to figure out what to do with that gift, whether you deserved it or not." She left the ICU and took the elevator to the hospital chapel. It was empty at this hour. Maya sat in the back row and finally let herself cry. She cried for Lily, for all the moments stolen by a drunk driver's choice. She cried for Marcus Webb and his family. She cried for Daniel Ortiz and the people he'd hurt. She cried for herself and the innocence she'd lost. The woman she'd been before the accident was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who understood that healing wasn't always clean, that justice wasn't always clear. But that woman was still a doctor, still a healer, still someone who saved lives. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patterson, both patients stable through the night. "You did good work today, Maya. Good work." She'd saved 2 lives tonight. One she'd wanted to save, one she'd struggled to save, but she'd saved them both. Maybe that was enough. Maybe being human, flawed and grieving and struggling and still choosing to heal was more heroic than never struggling at all. Maybe the doctors who'd saved Lily's killer had felt the same way. She thought about what she'd tell Lily. "I'm not the hero you thought I was. I'm broken and angry, but I do it anyway, even when it hurts. Because you taught me that saving lives is always right. I hope that's enough. I hope you'd still be proud." Maya stood and left the chapel. She had morning rounds in 6 hours. She had patients to check on, including 2 she'd saved tonight. She had a job to do. She had a life to live in a world without her daughter. And somehow, she was going to figure out how to do that while remaining the Dr. Lily had believed her to be. It wouldn't be easy. Some nights would be harder than others. Some choices would break her heart, but she'd face them as they came. Tonight, she'd stood at the intersection of judgment and mercy. She'd chosen to save a life she'd been tempted to let slip away. That had to count for something. It had to matter that she'd chosen right in the end. Maya walked through the empty hospital corridors toward home, carrying the weight of her choices, but standing upright under them. Behind her, 2 men slept in recovery rooms, their hearts beating steadily, both of them alive against the odds, both of them saved by a doctor who'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that healing wasn't about being perfect. It was about being human and choosing compassion anyway, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. That was what made it matter.